Most landlords I've spoken to are not ready for some of the biggest changes to renting in over not 10, 20, but over 30 years. This being before Google, back when The Matrix was in the cinemas. These changes are the Renters' Rights Act. If you're a landlord, a tenant, or someone who just wants to buy a property to rent out, you're going to take something useful away from this. There are things that need to be done right now, and I'll show you exactly how to do them. Get this wrong, and you could be fined up to £7,000. I'm Remy. I own 2 buy-to-lets with the aim to buy another 2 in 2026. On this channel, I document my journey, my wins, my mistakes, my numbers, but this law affects me directly, and honestly, most of the changes I'm fine with. But there's a certain type of landlord that's just going to hit much harder than others, and when I tell you what that type looks like, some of you might even recognise yourselves. So here are the 5 things that you need to know. These questions will come up, and when they do, you'll know the answer, know exactly where you stand, and you can hit the like button and thank me later. Because the Renters' Rights Act, it's no longer something coming down the line, it is now law. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 key changes. I also want to mention one of these 5 changes, it's almost being completely ignored in the mainstream coverage that's out there. And it's the one thing that I think is going to cause the most problems over the next 12 months. It's not an eventual thing anymore. It's here, it's live. And the bit that people miss is it applies to every single tenancy in England, existing ones included. If you've got a tenant in your property right now, it already affects you today. Now, before I get into the 5 changes, there's something I want to plant in your head because I'm going to come back to it halfway through the video. There is one change in the Act that I think most landlords are going to get caught out by, not because it's complicated, but because no one's really talking about it. It's not Section 21. Keep watching and I'll tell you what it is. So what's actually going on here? Why is this Act happening? The honest answer is the government's been under pressure for years about the rental standards and tenant security. Some of that pressure is legitimate. There were landlords abusing Section 21 to evict tenants who just complained about the property needing repairs. There were practices that genuinely needed addressing. The issue is, like most legislation, the response doesn't just affect the people who are behaving badly, it affects everyone, and here we are. 5 major changes, all live, all affecting your portfolio. Let's go through them one by one, and I'll tell you what I'm actually doing with my own properties as we go. Change number 1, so Section 21 is dead. So this is the headline everyone's seen. Section 21, no fault evictions are gone. You can no longer serve a tenant with notice to leave simply because you want your property back. You now need a legal ground for eviction, whether that's rent arrears, antisocial behaviour, wanting to sell. Those still work, but you've got to prove them. For most responsible landlords, it doesn't really change your day-to-day that much, but what it does change is your risk calculation at the tenant selection stage, because once someone is in, getting them out if things go wrong just got slower and it got more expensive. Number 2, and here's where it starts to get interesting, so all tenancies are now periodic. Fixed term contracts are gone, so no more 6-month, 12-month agreements in the traditional sense. Every tenancy now rolls month to month indefinitely. Tenants can leave with 2 months' notice at any point. That flexibility is gone from your side as a landlord. And actually, this is the change that I mentioned at the start, the one that no one's really talking about. Because for landlords with joint tenancies, HMOs, student lets, it isn't just an inconvenience, it fundamentally changes how you manage those periods where, let's say, one tenant moves out but you have others there. It affects refurbishments, reletting. But I'll come back to what you can actually do about it. But first, I'll get through the other changes. Number 3, you can only increase rent once every 12 months. And tenants now have the explicit right to challenge any increase at a first-tier tribunal if they believe it's above the market rate. Now, that challenge isn't automatic, it isn't instant, but the right is there. And I've seen early cases where tribunals haven't always landed in the landlord's favour. But the practical takeaway being to be fair, be evidence-based, make sure any increase you put through is reflective of what's actually going on in the market and that you can document that. Number 4, blanket pet refusals are now illegal. You can't just put no pets and use that as an automatic rejection. You need a documented, reasonable reason. Leasehold restrictions, valid. Just not wanting the hassle, that's not good enough anymore. You can now require pet damage insurance as a condition if accepting a pet. But if you're going to allow them, make sure that's in your tenancy agreement. Filtering tenants on the basis of they're on benefits or have children, that's now explicitly legal. You can't include that in your listings. This was already being tested in courts before the Act, but it's now black and white in legislation. Make sure your listings and your agent's instructions are updated. Right, so I said I'd come back to the periodic tenancy issue and what you can actually do about it. Under the old system, if you had 2 tenants in a property on a 12-month fixed term, you knew when that contract ended. You could plan your void period, your refurbishments, your marketing to get new people in. There was a rhythm to it. Under periodic tenants, either tenant can give 2 months' notice at any time, individually. This means one could leave in December, the other one in March. So you're planning for the property being empty. It becomes reactive instead of being able to plan for it. What I'd suggest, first of all, do you trust your letting agent? Are they on the ball? If you have joint tenancies, speak to your letting agent about how they're adapting their management style, their strategy, how they market properties. Because ultimately, you want to be ready if a tenant does serve notice on you. Because obviously, it's a big change. It's not really a problem. It just requires a shift in how you plan. Now we're coming up to the bit that I actually think is probably the most important part of the video. Because everything I've just told you is the what. The legislation, the rules, the changes. But in a couple of minutes, I'm going to give you my honest take on whether this is actually as bad as everyone's making it out to be. And I think my answer might surprise you. Because I've got a view on whether this is actually bad for landlords, like everyone. And it's not what the headlines are saying. Honestly, I think it depends entirely on what kind of landlord you are. If you've been running your portfolio properly, so good properties, fair rents, decent communication, most of this doesn't really change your day-to-day that much. Yes, it adds admin. Yes, it tightens margins. It makes evictions slower if things go wrong. But it doesn't make property investing unviable. What it does is it accelerates landlords leaving who are either cutting corners or who are already on the fence about whether the numbers actually work. And the part that doesn't actually get said, it's good for the landlords who decide to stay. On one hand, I love that there are going to be more properties available on the market, more people having the opportunity at home ownership. They may become a little bit more affordable. But on the other hand, in a market where there's a lot more people wanting to rent than there's rental properties available, it's only going to naturally make rents go up if more landlords are looking to sell. I've got 2 buy-to-lets, buying a third this year. I'm not running away from the market. The people who stay in, the ones that adapt and run things properly, I think they're really going to be in a significantly stronger position in 3 years, let's say, than what they're at right now. But that's my view. Of course, you should form your own based on your numbers, your area, your risk appetite. Here's what you actually need to do off the back of this video. 5 things, some of which you need to do this week. 1, if you have joint tenancies, understand how the shift to periodic affects your planning for void periods. Talk to your agent about how they're managing this going forward. Some of them are already adapting their approach to this, and it's just about knowing what your options are. 2, compare your rent to the local market. If you haven't reviewed your rent in the last 12 months, look into that before you put through any kind of increase. Make sure you've got comparable properties documented so you're ready if any kind of challenge comes from it. Just make sure you're keeping on top of it as well. It makes it easier for the tenant rather than if you leave it a few years, let's say, it gets massively behind market rent, then you've got a huge increase. So it benefits the tenant, but it also benefits you. 3, if you self-manage, update any listings, or if you have a lettings agent, update them as well. Removing blanket pet refusals unless you have a documented reason. Remove any language that can be read as filtering people based on benefits or children. It's such a simple thing, but obviously it's some big legal exposure if you leave it. Number 4, if anything in here made you unsure about your specific situation, speak to a qualified letting agent, property solicitor who's up to date on the Act. I document my journey honestly, but I'm not a legal professional and nothing in this video is legal advice. When it comes to law, always get it in writing from someone qualified. So that's everything you need to know about the Renters' Rights Act as it stands today. If you found this useful, here's one thing that I'd ask. Please hit subscribe. I'm documenting everything about building a buy-to-let portfolio in the UK in 2026. The good decisions, the expensive mistakes, and all the things that I wish people had told me before I started. It's free, it's honest, and as you've seen today, it might save you a 4-figure fine. Before you go, like the video, share the video, drop a comment down below with your thoughts, because I'm genuinely curious as to what people's opinions are, what they think. I read every single comment. But thanks so much for watching, it means the absolute world, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.